Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I am Lori Caswell, the editor of Mobile Enterprise. Today we're going to hear from David Kress, Vice President, Enterprise Mobility and Connected Devices for VDC Research, Matt Weger, Assistant Vice President for Application Development, Safelite, and Brian Philbin, Mobility Specialist, Antenna Software, now part of Pegasystems. Of the 10,000 people employed by Safelite, more than 4,000 are in the field providing glass repair and replacement services to more than 4.5 million customers across North America. So to improve efficiency, customer service, Safelite deployed an Android app that transformed the way these field techs address the needs of the customers, and it drastically improved field operations. So Matt is going to talk to us today about how they built the business case, particularly with the user in mind. To start, a bit of background on Matt. For the past 12 years, he has served as Safelite's IT department, working to create the next gen of systems for the company. His roles have included managing all aspects of customer-facing systems, including Safelite's client system integrations, claims management systems, order entry platforms, web platforms, POS systems, warehouse systems, and mobile solutions for all the field techs. His technology teams and platforms have supported and enabled Safelite to win a number of customer service and excellence awards, and you'll hear more about that today. David is going to start us off and speak to current trends and best practices. He has more than 10 years experience covering the markets for enterprise and government mobility solutions, wireless data communication technologies, and automatic data capture research and consulting. He focuses on identifying key drivers, enablers in the adoption of mobile and wireless solutions among mobile workers in the extended enterprise. He has extensive primary market research management and execution experience to support market sizing and forecasting, TCO, comparative product performance evaluation, competitive benchmarking, and end-user requirement analysis. Brian, he's then going to wrap up the discussion. He is a mobile specialist at Antenna and has over 3 decades of experience in software, business process management, and field service. He has spent the last 10 years managing the myriad of mobile deployments on behalf of Antenna's multinational clients around the world. He is also a frequent blogger and speaker for mobile field service and workforce management events. So one of our goals is to make this event as interactive as possible, and we'd like to get your feedback throughout the presentation. If you please notice the Q&A function on the left side below the presenter headshots. This feature will enable you to ask questions throughout this webinar, and we're going to address them in a Q&A session once Brian is finished speaking. Today's slides can be downloaded from the Event Resources Center, located in the same area on the screen, and a replay of the event on all your devices will be available on our website within about 2 hours after this event concludes. So with that, let's get started. David, please begin.
Great, Lori. Thanks so much, and thanks to everyone who's joining us today for the next hour. So, as Lori had mentioned, I'm with VDC Research. I'll skip over the quick infomercial about VDC just in the interest of time, and sort of get to the meat of my discussion, or at least the portion that I'm going to be talking about. So I've been asked to just review some of the trends that we're seeing with respect to mobility, and more specifically enterprise mobility. And also talk about, more specifically, some of the trends we're seeing in field service automation as they relate not only to the types of capabilities, applications, and solutions that are being deployed, but ultimately how also these solutions are being designed and developed from a software perspective. So just a couple of maybe obvious, maybe not so obvious statements to sort of get us going. Today's workforce is, and these are just sort of recent statistics that I'm sure everyone has probably seen at one point or another, but is we are living in an increasingly mobile world. We are living in a world where access to content, to services via mobile devices is increasingly pervasive. We know of this through our own personal experiences, and then also through experiences that we have in our work lives, and that is being reflected in today's workforce that is increasingly untethered, that is increasingly mobile, and we projected that we reached the billion worker plateau or milestone in 2013, and as a segment of the workforce, the mobile workforce is the fastest growing segment. So moving on, we expect that number to only increase. As far as harnessing this increasingly mobile and distributed workforce, enterprise mobility has become and continues to be a major investment priority amongst decision makers within organizations. Not only CIOs, but also CMOs and CTOs, and the transition in terms of who is and how broadly these solutions are being supported and deployed is one of the interesting aspects of the trends that we're seeing in the market. The performance of mobile devices, and not only the devices, but also the networks that they operate on, and the applications that are running on these devices or are made available through these devices, continues to grow, and the performance gaps that may have historically or at one point or another limited some of the capabilities of mobile solutions is closing. So when we're looking at processing power, when we're looking at memory configuration, when we're looking at the sort of the design of extremely intuitive applications, when we're looking at some of the cost of deploying, developing, and supporting mobile solutions, those barriers are increasingly being overcome, and as a result, we're seeing mobile solutions increasingly pervasive. According to our most recent research, about 8 in 10 organizations currently are developing some type of enterprise mobile solution, enterprise mobile application, in varying degrees of sophistication. One of the things that we've seen also, I mean, again, we've been doing this research and covering these markets for the better part of the last 10, 15 years, is we've seen a transition from sort of highly siloed and point solution deployments within organizations, largely aligned along various lines of business, to become more strategic, to become more comprehensive within an organization, to become more cohesive. So again, from sort of skunkwork operations to one that now has a much greater sort of corporate horizontal overlay. So again, just further elevating the status and the importance of mobility within the organization. When you hear or read about enterprise mobility today, it is hard not to at least read or come across some articles or have some discussions around BYOD and the impact of BYOD policies and programs. Yes, they are increasingly pervasive, and yes, the use of personal devices in sort of work environments is increasingly, I would say, common. Our research suggests that over half of organizations today either have or are planning to design or deploy some type of BYOD program, and that these are also evolving as organizations start with BYOD and then look at how else they can implement mobile solutions. So I think it is expanding opportunities and introducing or exposing organizations and introducing sort of first experiences for organizations as it relates to mobility. One thing that I will say, and that still holds true with a lot of the research that we do, especially when it comes to sort of the line of business, frontline, more business critical or mission critical mobile worker, that for these solutions we still are seeing that the sort of the default is more of an enterprise-oriented, enterprise-focused, enterprise-issued deployment. There clearly is the interest to leverage whatever devices are available, but today for most of these line of business solutions, it still is the more traditional model of sort of a centralized enterprise-issued solution. So in looking at how mobility is and the benefits of mobility and the drivers behind mobility are impacting organizations, we can obviously spend a lot of time on a number of these topics. But a couple of things that I think are interesting have come to the fore in our research, and that is enterprise mobility, especially around line of business, has historically been focused around sort of improving workers' productivity and sort of the whole notion of the workforce multiplier, and that is still very true, and it's still very much a driver and a benefit, and represents a benefit to organizations. But one of the things that we're seeing, especially as it relates to customer engagement and customer-facing opportunities, that the focus is increasingly, and shifting is probably the wrong word, but at least migrating to one that looks very much at how mobility, how service delivery through mobile solutions is being viewed as a sort of a customer loyalty driver and a customer engagement solution. And I think that's a very important distinction to make and a very important shift. And we're also seeing it, expand beyond just mobility. When we talk about mobility, it's hard not to talk about other sort of major technology themes, IT themes within organizations, more specifically looking at IoT or Internet of Things and M2M types of initiatives. And what we're seeing within certainly service transformation within forward-looking, forward-thinking organizations is we're seeing greater integration of what we would consider more product lifecycle management and customer and now service lifecycle management solutions. And really what I'm talking about here is through Internet of Things, it delivers the opportunity to embed intelligence and sensing and monitoring capabilities within one's assets that can deliver a wide variety of sort of predictive mechanisms in terms of managing those assets, but also can deliver to the R&D organizations further upstream within the organization critical feedback on how assets are being used and how they are performing in the field, so that as we design and develop next-generation solutions, that information, that real-time intelligence about the usage models can directly influence next-generation design decisions. And that's the type of sort of integrated suite that we're starting to see, and that's really where we're starting to see a lot of the innovation, especially as it relates to service transformation. So one thing is true in today's business, especially when you're looking at sort of more mature economies, manufacturing industries, is that service is an increasingly important aspect, especially post-sale service, in the way that organizations compete and the way that they are sort of differentiated. And mobility developments are fundamental in sort of enabling organizations to differentiate in this increasingly competitive post-sales service margins. And service is critical to organizations because historically they've delivered higher margins, and most importantly perhaps the impact of service delivery on customers' retention is significant, and that's really driving a lot of competition in this space. And what we're seeing as a result of this confluence of trends, of this perfect storm, if you will, is that this increase in competition is driving a new wave of service solutions, and we're seeing a lot of transformation around services that is elevating the role of service and support, and we're seeing that through new service deliveries, such as self-service. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be delivered by a dedicated service technician. The whole idea of self-service is certainly something that we're starting to see more of, innovation around delivery processes, innovation around pricing and business models. So as a result, we're seeing a shift in sort of core field service automation and field service solutions away from sort of the more operational tasks such as scheduling and dispatching, and we're introducing a lot more sophisticated and advanced capabilities in these platforms: demand forecasting, workforce management, and again, as I said before, it's really not just about ensuring that the service technician is as productive as they can be i.e., closing the work order on the first visit, being able to manage, the largest number of tickets in a given shift, but also do so in a way that we are delivering and optimizing sort of the customer experience and customer satisfaction, and that's really, I think, where we're seeing sort of the greatest change in service solutions, in mobility solutions. And really, what does that mean? That means that today's mobility solution, today's field service automation is probably much more sophisticated than it ever has been, much more multifunctional, and much more accessible. So we're seeing a number of different sort of capabilities, or if you want to call them applications, being integrated into a service solution. So this is just, in the next couple of slides, conveys some statistics from research that we conducted a little over, or a little under, a half a year ago, amongst organizations with field service operations, and specifically asked them to respond to a number of questions. And this really just talks about what types of applications, what types of capabilities they are integrating into their service platform, either currently supporting or planning to support. And as we're seeing here, as you saw in the previous slides, is things like work order management and resource planning and parts management and fleet management are payments and mobile point of sale are increasingly elements that are being folded into this solution. So again, looking at a much more sophisticated and a much more complete mobile solution, mobile capability. Looking at it from a slightly different perspective, we ask, what ultimately is the most important, or are the most important metrics through which or by which organizations measure the success of field mobile solutions. And as I said before, worker productivity still is sort of the primary focal point for a lot of investment initiatives, at least initially, because there is a lot of benefits to be gained, and the models and sort of the fundamentals around mobility solutions in terms of their impact on worker productivity are very well established. But what we're starting to see now is things like increased customer service and loyalty, better communication and collaboration amongst the workforce, but also with customers, and fundamentally, increased profitability and revenue opportunities is really what organizations are looking at. And one of the things that we've seen happen within organizations that is really driving some of this shift is a change in individuals who are making decisions on mobile investments and mobile budgets. And that shift is probably best personified by the increased relevance of the marketing officer and the service officer in technology solutions and technology developments. And not to say that the IT organization is no longer or does no longer have decision-making authority. That certainly isn't the case. But what has happened is that organizations or functional organizations within companies, such as marketing, that have greater outward-facing focus, is playing a greater role in things like mobile solution design and development, especially as they relate to customer service, customer loyalty, and repeat business. And we're certainly seeing this across a number of industries, including segments with large field service operations. Now, mobility isn't, even though we've seen significant advances in the technology and the accessibility of the technology and the capabilities of mobile devices and networks, etc., it's still it's a fairly complicated undertaking, and one that can have some relatively significant costs associated with it. So when we're looking at sort of investment barriers, clearly we're seeing budget come up as a major line item. We've seen too many organizations in the past sink a lot of money into mobile solutions and develop applications over the course of multiple months, and then ultimately what gets rolled out misses the mark for one reason or another. So there is a sort of a sobering aspect to some of these investments that need to be made. And one of the things that we've seen most importantly is that the need for multifunctional approach to design, decision making, also testing mobile applications is extremely important, especially with a service workforce where you might have a slightly aging workforce. We've seen that certainly in utilities and certain other segments. If we're and being able to sort of balance that with today's much younger and much more technology savvy workforce that's starting to be hired. So one of the perfect examples of that is display size and use of keyboard versus so sort of more of a notebook paradigm versus a smartphone tablet paradigm, and what works best for your workers. So those decisions are very important to the success of a solution, and the inclusion of end users in that decision-making process is extremely important. But beyond that, there's certainly technology or technical hurdles that are also constantly addressed or elevated, and security cannot be understated. Historically, that has been a major barrier. I would say today that security, as far as an adoption barrier, it's still a red flag for a lot of organizations, but it's not the dead end that or the full stop that it may have been a couple of years back. But what we've certainly seen, and a lot of software development and software solutions have helped address that, is that the integration and the design and the development and the support of mobile applications and the barriers to overcome those have significantly gone down, especially when you're looking at the complexity of designing and integrating field service solutions. So I think that provides a sort of a good segue to talking about that a little bit. What does it mean from a software development perspective? And we've seen some significant changes as they relate to mobile development, mobile software development. One of the things that's especially true is that this whole notion of agile development, across, to manage not only multiple platforms, but, various types of applications is a key requirement. And historically, we've heard of mobile projects that take, sometimes several quarters, if not a full year, to deploy. So there has been a lot of inefficiency in terms of development cycles, which are leading to much longer sort of time to value type of models. While a lot of line of business solutions are designed to operate on a single platform, as an organization, ensuring reliable performance across multiple platforms and creating sustainable mobile applications with strong life cycle in mind is also an extremely important requirement. And for line of business, for enterprise mobility application, the whole notion of back-end integration, whereby we are accessing multiple back-end sources and we are providing capabilities like offline support. These are still very critical and challenging requirements for organizations to address. And the need for greater code and infrastructure reuse to counter time to market pressures is certainly something that we're seeing organizations address, especially with some of these more sophisticated next generation development platforms. But at the same time, and this is counter to what we've seen, or where we've seen the market trend recently, is developers are still looking for freedom and options. To use basically any tool set with open standard-based frameworks is extremely important. And so whether you're developing a native application or a HTML5 application or a hybrid application, organizations don't want to necessarily be beholden to one approach, and they want to have the flexibility that goes with any type of capability. So according to again most sort of recent field mobile application, development efforts. It's sort of a mix. On the left-hand side, it's a mix of approaches that organizations are taking between sort of third-party package solutions to custom development solutions by third-party, as well as custom developed internally or solutions internally. The variety of development approaches with a sort of a mix between sort of mobile development platforms or MEPs, native development, web-enabled development, HTML5 enabled development, or hybrid solutions, and also a relatively sort of clean mix between both sort of single platform versus multi-platform development capabilities. So a pretty broad spectrum of development decisions. And as I said before, I mean, there's a number of challenges that organizations are tasked with that go, certainly beyond not only the cost of development, but also addressing time to market, accessing or finding capable mobile developers, and managing scope and scope creep, managing the life cycle of the application. I mean, that's incredibly important as we're looking to deploy mobile solutions, that it's not just an application you design, develop, deploy, but it's also that you think about sustainable applications and their requirement. Integration of strong security, whether it's on-device encryption, whether it's multi-factor authentication, whether it's sort of over-the-air encryption. There's a critical requirement, especially as we're accessing more sensitive information through these applications. So a number of sort of development challenges to introduce. As I said before, multiple platforms that they're being deployed on. And a number of considerations to take into play. So looking at it, one of the ways we look at it is between sort of front-end and back-end development. From a front-end development perspective, we're really talking about solutions that or need to address applications that can support OS upgrades. I mean, one of the biggest challenges that we've seen, especially when we're looking at some of the consumer technologies that are being used in enterprise environments, is the pace at which and the cadence at which operating systems are upgraded can be a challenge to manage. So to ensure that when there is an OS upgrade, first of all, that you're managing it centrally within your organization, but also that the application is capable of supporting that upgrade, and doing so where you can reuse code as frequently as possible, again, to address not only time to market but also development costs. Backend, again, this introduces a number of other significant challenges, and here it's really about a couple of things. First of all, how am I supporting offline? How am I integrating with multiple backends? How am I supporting large data sets that aren't bottlenecks as the application is performing? So these are all sort of the critical issues that need to be addressed as you're designing and developing and deploying mobile solutions. Because this is where the sophistication comes in with enterprise mobility solutions, with field service solutions, is that we are leveraging, whether it's customer records, whether it's asset records, whatever the back end might be, we are accessing those databases, and the need to integrate more than one, but multiple backends is increasingly the norm for field service and enterprise mobility solutions. And as one might expect, including multiple backends and integrating them, adds significant design complexities and cost, as our research evidenced. And we're seeing a lot of next generation platforms, mobile platforms, that are really streamlining this integration of backends and minimizing the need for more, sort of custom coding requirements for backend integration. So there are a lot of interesting third-party solutions that are addressing this. The other thing that we hear about and we talk about a lot, and might be oversight when people think about mobility solutions, is the need for offline support. Even with expanded wireless coverage today, synchronization needs to be a part of any mobile B2B initiative, and planning for sort of robustness against limited connectivity, low bandwidth scenarios is absolutely critical. as again suggested and evidenced through our research. So, even though networks are increasingly available, especially for a lot of service workers that might be in remote settings, that might be in an elevator shaft, access to a network can't be. You can't assume that that's always going to be the case. So that's certainly something that needs to be considered. So just in quick summary, I know that I've probably exhausted most of my time, if not all of it already. Just to leave you with sort of the key points that I was hoping to make. Customer service, customer loyalty, customer retention are really sort of the key elements that organizations are thinking about with next generation service solutions. So that's been a big shift in sort of the design and development mentalities. Customer or service is an increasingly competitive space. It's one where organizations are seeing certainly significant revenue and margin potential, but also one where loyalty and retention is ultimately the name of the game. So we're moving away from automating only highly manual and paper-based processes to including much more sophisticated capabilities within sort of the service platforms, including dynamic dispatch management, service lifecycle management, parts management, et cetera, et cetera. Clearly, at the end of the day, we need to focus on the important aspects of service automation, first-time fix rates, workforce utilization, absolutely critical in achieving a loyal customer base. And, especially when we're looking at sort of appointment times and wait windows and things that we've all sort of been frustrated with as individual consumers. So I think that this is where mobility can play a significant role. And mobile applications are becoming more important with changing end user requirements, and we're seeing a lot of transformation, especially around self-service capabilities, for example, in service automation. So there's really a lot of different ways that mobile is impacting service organizations. So with that, I'd like to thank everyone for listening in today, and I'm going to hand this over to Matt from Safelite.
Hi, folks. So again, my name is Matt Wager. I am responsible for our application development platforms at Safelite. And today we're going to be talking through our evolution in the mobile space, but in general about Safelite, the technology that we use, our evolution in the mobile space, and how we've come from what I'll call a more operational focused company and technology firm to a customer-driven technology and operation and firm. So a little bit about Safelite for those of you that do not know. We are the nation's largest vehicle glass repair and replacement company. We operate basically everywhere. We have about 600 facilities across the country, and then we provide mobile service to 98% of all zip codes across the country at some point or another. We've recently developed what we call the Safelite Advantage, which really highlights and encapsulates a lot of what we are and what we do. That is always being there, knowing who to expect, the best replacement technology, stronger repairs, and the industry's only national lifetime warranty. So in thinking about what to talk about today, I really came to the title of Technology Enabling the Customer Experience to try to showcase how Safelite's technology has evolved from an operational replacement of a piece of paper to something that is intended to really grasp our end customers, engage them in the experience of the replacement or the repair of their vehicle, and enable our technicians to focus on their customers while having a good tool that's fully lifecycle integrated. So that's the title of what we're going to talk about today. The business challenges that we faced when we first started this go back a while, but if you think about a mobile workforce in a disconnected mode operating off of paper, there is a substantial amount of disconnect just right off the bat. Life continues to happen from the moment that work order printout was occurred, and things were laborious. We had multiple people engaged to try to understand where a current technician was, how it was operating. There's a role that we have in our field services side that's pretty common called a dispatcher, and they were responsible for managing upwards of 15 to 20 techs, and then there were constant calls. They used to keep, at one point, you'd see a dispatcher that would have 3 or 4 phones that were even sometimes given to them by the technicians to be able to communicate back and forth. And managing that became just almost insurmountable. Technicians were called on a regular basis for status or ETA or where are they with the next job, and that occurred regularly. And we had what I'll call application silos, where, like I said, real life was not reflected in that current work order. So changes that would occur or customer needs that would come in would not make it down to that technician. So they really wouldn't have a connected flow to their day to understand what was going on and where they were. So before I dive into our mobile side, it's important to think about the whole picture. So Safelite's been evolving in technology for decades, and we've got a very solid, fully integrated front office to back office suite. So a lot of what we do is enabled through that interconnectivity that you even heard David mention earlier, where we have an order entry platform, a point of sale platform, a dispatching system that are fully integrated across the board so that every application and every knowledge is spread throughout the organization so that it's a full cycle piece. We start that off the bat with trying to keep our customer in front of mind. And the technology that we have in place with the mobile side has really enabled a lot of this. The first thing that we do when we're coming out to a mobile job, and we've had the technician assigned to the job, we send out what we call our technician profile email. This was enabled through this platform, but it allowed us to identify the technician that was routed to. We have a photo that we store, and then a profile that we store for that technician, and then we send it to every customer that has a mobile service job with an email address prior to that technician arriving. That gives them great peace of mind that they know who's coming, they can trust this person because their background's been checked, they're qualified to do what they do because they've been trained and certified on it. Now we've recently extended that same feature set into what we call our customer portal. Again, many of you probably have something similar. This is where our customers can come online. They can view their current job status. They can view the technician that's assigned. We're working to integrate our ETA functions that are currently in flight, mapping functions of where the technician is. It just gives them all capability to then even update or edit or change their appointment details if they needed to. And then lastly, on the customer-facing piece, we have a suite of systems that are working to provide refined customer ETAs. So that's just an SMS example where we're reaching out to a customer, letting them know a narrowed window for our schedule availability time of when we'll be there. And that's driven from the mobile side, from the technician themselves. So Safelite's mobile platforms have a long history. We started back in 2004, 2005 with a concept. And that concept was really more operationally focused on how do we automate and connect that work order to the technology that was evolving at the time. And so we started with an initial concept of moving away from paper-based work orders to a connected-based work order. We then took some trial and error, went into what we call our MRM2, which is Mobile Resource Manager. That's our internal name for our mobile application for our technicians. That continued, I'll call it evolution. We did continued concepting, we did continued pilots until 2009 when we finally rolled out our full national rollout for the first time on our MRM2 platform. That was a BlackBerry-based application and device, and the screen and real estate was limiting of what you could do, how you could present, the questionable nature of where BlackBerry was going led us to kind of go back to the drawing board again for our MRM3 version of the application. I'll tell you a little bit more about how we came to where we are, but we studied and piloted in 2011 and 2012 our MRM3 platform, and then led to, in 2013, we cranked out, and I mean literally cranked out, our national rollout onto our final Android-based Samsung Note 2 device that went across the country in about 4 months, where we deployed about 4,000 technicians in 4 months. It was a phenomenal success to get it out there quickly, and then it's been very well received. Where we started isn't where we are. If you look at our first version, I couldn't even find a picture of the yellow brick Motorola phone that we used with a little tiny 1-inch by 1-inch screen, but it more or less was a paperwork order being displayed on a 1-inch by 1-inch screen. It was very difficult. The goals were, again, reducing costs, saving paper, and efficiency. The form factor really kind of limited some of that capability, and thus led us back to the continued investigation and piloting. We then moved into our MRM2 suite, which ended up with a BlackBerry, a Bluetooth pen for signature capture, a Bluetooth printer where we would actually print off a customer receipt, and then we did fully roll that out in 2009. This was our first real stab at field service productivity gain. This was, again, rolled out across the country over that 2009 timeframe and provided some pretty inventive things at that time for what we could do, but it was still a step away from where we really wanted. So we, again, took a step back, reviewed what technology was out there, did multiple pilots, and selected the Note 2 phone as our platform, Android as our operating system, and wrote a Java native app that it became our MRM3 application, and have the device plus the printer as the full solution. And again, that's now fully deployed. Our business case to get to where we are started with what you would think it would. So it was the cost of the paper reduction was one of the main drivers at the beginning. The goals to get to a connected workflow team, so you know where your field service techs are. The goals to include dispatching and routing efficiencies. And those have evolved over time. The move from MRM2 to MRM3 really came through the changes in technology that enabled the new feature sets. But from a business case, ours was pretty straightforward in that even on the new platform with the new feature set, it was going to create an ongoing run, and to enable a new tech was actually cheaper than the selection of choices of technology we had from before. The pens were really expensive. So we moved away from that and now have deployed that full solution on the Android devices across the country. And how we did MRM3 kind of harks back to some of the things that David was referring to in his slides. We engaged our internal customers. So I call this implementing a customer-driven solution. And as an internal IT department, we have internal customers that are our technicians. And our goals were to listen to them, to really focus on what they were doing, how we could help them, how we could create an application that really enabled their day, and we created it. And our goal in the end was to delight our internal customers with a tool that would really just make them have the ultimate productivity that they could have in an easy-to-use workflow. So it's an event-driven workflow. It is fully integrated into our back office for real-time updates and changes. There's work orders that they can view. There's mapping. There's daily manifests that they can see. There's a pre-inspect process that's supported by photographs, and the new devices have phenomenal photography capabilities. There's part updates, and of course, the solution had to be safe, secure, PCI compliant for our payment processing. So in listening to our technicians, we started off, where we started off actually wasn't where we ended up. We had a view going into this at first that we would be running on tablets. The thought process back then was the bigger the screen, the prettier it is. So we piloted on multiple cases. We actually piloted, then piloted, then piloted. We had a core group of technicians that were spread out across the country that participated in our pilots. And we would literally send out a device to them that was preloaded with the application, and then we would have them operate. And we'd work for about 3 months per pilot, where we'd measure, monitor, watch how they did their job on a daily basis with the devices that they had with the application that we provided. And then in the end, we scored it all up with surveys that were consistent across the different pilots, and then asked for their opinions on which one that they would want to be running on for good. That is what we should take to the country. And I included some just kind of verbatim comments back from our technicians in the slides. Hopefully you can see it. It's a little bit small to read. But it's something that, when you look at it, it's interesting. Some people's perception comes through. Some folks thought the tablet, there's a lesser degree of folks, but some folks thought the tablet was easy to use, easier to hold, greater battery life. But I think what ended up winning in the end was the having one device instead of having a tablet and a phone to have to manage in addition to their printer. So we had, you can read the different comments in the presentation, will be available offline, but having one consolidated application on one device, which we came to, which is the Note 2, which is kind of a phone tablet all together in one big, beautiful screen, ended up being the right answer for the team, and then that's what we've taken to the country. So we also kept in mind our end customers, so Safelite Autoglass customers that have come to us to have their vehicle taken care of. And our Safelite application for MRM3 is actually now a finalist for the upcoming Stevie Awards for customer service. And that was submitted as an application for our MRM3 application. And we really called out a few key things that it came to. And the one that I'm going to mention first is implied in the bullet points, but maybe not explicitly stated. The technology enabled the technician to focus on what they needed to focus on, and that's the customer experience and the care for the vehicle. Their administrative work that they needed to do to notify their dispatcher is reduced of where they are, what they're doing, how they're doing. The engagement of the updated data provides them a complete view of how it's going. So it really allowed our technicians to focus on being the customer-facing, customer-serving, customer-driven people that they are. It allowed for convenience of the technician, so they can integrate and do their call-aheads directly through the application, and having that all on one device really enabled that. It allowed for better communication between our customers and our technicians. There's a step above in security with electronic signature capture right on the screen, and then the quality. So we provide a bunch more information available than we've ever been able to for our technicians on the devices, so that they can make sure if they have a question about a specific job or a specific tip, that they can access it for all different types of vehicles that they're servicing. So I included a couple screenshots of the application just to give you a feel. On the left, you've got the work order summary. If you notice, we tried to incorporate icons for quick visual representation of customer scenarios. We included vehicles as well as big, easy-to-use buttons for our technicians. In the middle, you see an example of just some graphical implementations that we did. That's an example where the repair was needed on the actual windshield that they can then just click. On the top right, this actually came through a suggestion and some steps that one of our technicians took, where he realized that he was going to see a customer of ours that his phone indicated TTY, or that the customer was deaf. So he actually took and videotaped a person doing sign language explaining what he was going to do on the job, and then he took that to his job and showed the customer the phone, which played the video. And the care that took of that customer is what really is stood out to all of us, and we're actually incorporating a video similar to that of I'll call it a better production quality that'll be a part of our application throughout it. And then beneath that is where the electronic signature capture is. So our overall results, we started what I'll call operationally, so I'll talk about the operational benefits, but over time we evolved into the customer benefits. Operationally, we moved to a paperless environment. We moved to a real-time connected environment. So that to me has probably the largest impact. Life beyond a printed page makes a significant difference for our teams. The paper savings is probably about a quarter million a year. We enabled routing as a part of this package, which is a separate application that we call MDM, but it all is integrated on the backside, Mobile Dispatch Manager. We went a little crazy on the M acronyms. But the intelligent routing, which then is dispatched out to the technicians on their handhelds, did improve their drive times, which reduced miles, which reduced fuel savings and vehicle costs, and we estimate that to be about $750,000 a year. We've had phenomenal feedback from our technicians and the employee satisfaction and retention, and then overall increased productivity of the techs because of the communication efficiencies that are in it. And then from the customer perspective, the convenience. So knowing who that technician is was enabled out of this technology. The quality, the overall improved interaction with the technology, as well as allowing that technician to focus on their customer. And then that enhanced communication so that we have full integrated email, texts for status updates or ETAs for that customer, and then security, fully PCI compliant payment processing and on-screen signature capture. So that's my portion of the slides. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian, who's going to pick up from Antenna.
Thanks, Matt. So in wrapping up, basically, I'm going to recap some of the things that we've determined after deploying hundreds of applications, dozens of which are field service applications. There's some key things that you need to be able to consider when you're looking at your mobile deployment and the mobile decision-making that you're going to use. So the number one is field service processes, field processes out in the field are different from your standard inside the four walls type processes. So you need to consider applications that are designed from the outside in, which means, as Matt mentioned, you've got field technicians in the field, they do a specific process, make the application work the way they work, then go and map it to the back-end system or systems of record so that you're optimizing their ability to do their job. You're not burdening them. But you want to make sure that you do this on a change-ready platform because you're going to have to update this application as it goes forward because it will become a critical path, business-critical application, as well as the fact that you've got to be able to manage things like security, encryption, data management, conflict resolution and detection. The platform takes care of that heavy lifting stuff so that you can build the application on top of it. When you look at the mobile application in general, it's about increasing visibility and improving velocity. So getting the right information to the right person at the right time and the right place, going out to the field and coming back from the field. So as Matt mentioned, the visibility of being able to let the technician know where they're going to be, being able to update the portal so the customer can check on the status, all of that stuff is critical when you start looking at these applications, especially from a time and motion perspective. And it's also critical from a managing your field perspective as well. And then think about capitalizing, both David and Matt mentioned this, capitalizing on your field service technicians as a trusted resource for things like upsell, cross-sell, when they're on site, being able to re-up the customer's service agreement and, providing some additional value-added features that will, to the customer, that will also provide value to your organization. And one of the killers is to concern yourself with how much change your organization can consume in a single byte. And for this, we typically recommend choosing the primary work path that's going to provide you with the highest value, deploying it first, and then adding capabilities and functionality to that application as you go. So focus on what's the key business value for both your mobile users and the back office folks. Get that out in the field, get some rapid adoption, and so be able to add to it. And again, this is critical when you build it on a platform. It allows you to do that rapid evolution of the application as you go forward. And then lastly, always remember that if you have a bad process and you automate it, you'll just have a faster bad process. So look at the mobile effort as an opportunity to re-examine some of your current processes and see if there's ways that you can improve those processes overall as part of the automation effort. When we look at how we build a framework for field service, we look at an 80-20 rule. The framework that we've built is about 80% of the standard functionality the field service organization needs. The remaining 20% is the configuration, extension, and customization for the specific processes that you have in your organization. So it's a field service application that's rapidly configurable and easily extendable. It's workflow-oriented. It follows a typical user experience. And the interface is designed to map to the worker's work process. So good user adoption, easy to evolve, great opportunity to control the work process in the field. What makes it different is the fact that we have a work process front end that's used to assemble the application so that you can develop your business rules, your screens, your data mapping, and all that in a pretty much drag and drop interface up front, and then the extensions can be added on in addition to that. It's an HTML5 app that operates in a patented hybrid container that allows us to update the application and its contents as content. So you're not requiring the user to go back out to the web store, the app store, and reload a new application every single time. You can evolve the application, push it down to the device, so the user always has the most up-to-date. And the UI and user experience is designed for a small form factor device. You can't take a large screen app and cram it onto a small form factor device. As both David and Matt mentioned, you know, the screen real estate is a premium on a small form factor device, so it has to be optimized for that screen size so that your user experience is a pleasant experience for the user. So it's optimized for the smaller form factor. It can also be used on an iPad or tablet, which allows for a larger form factor and obviously more screen real estate. And then it needs to be able to integrate to your back-end systems of record quickly and easily. You know, we assume you have data somewhere. We assume we've got to integrate with it and present it down to the mobile user, so we have an adapter framework that allows us to do that kind of integration so that we're mobilizing your existing data and not requiring you to do any heavy lifting. And at this point, I will hand it back to Lori.
Great, thank you very much. We only have a couple minutes, so I just wanted to squeeze one question in really fast. Both Matt and David touched upon this. David, you said that many companies miss the mark after going through an implementation on a solution and building apps. Matt mentioned where we started isn't where we wound up. So David, why do they miss the mark? Is there something that's very common, or does it change across the project?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question, and I wish there were an easy answer, but it really spans multiple we've seen this surface in multiple ways. One is what I had mentioned, and I believe Matt and Brian also touched upon, is making sure that you have from the very early stages the relevant parties involved, both from a sort of design and support perspective, as well as an end-user perspective. Make sure you get the testing that you need to do and spend the necessary time to do it. So that's one thing that we've seen go wrong in the past. Another one is very much around sort of application design, scope creep, whatever you want to call it, trying to cram too much, especially with today's sort of resource-constrained devices. Matt had mentioned they went with a sort of a phablet type device as opposed to a larger display tablet. Don't cram too much into the application. It has to be intuitive. It has to be easy to use. Cramming too much into it you'll realize a high level of frustration in terms of integrating these capabilities. Also, take into consideration some of the realities of today's mobile worker in terms of offline connectivity. We had talked about that. If it doesn't if you don't have access to a network, what happens, what happens to the application, and make sure that if offline is required, which I believe it is in most, field experiences, that the application can support that. So I mean, those are certainly some of the ones that we've seen. That we've seen people have sort of try to shortcut around. The other one is also training, especially for new processes. Make sure that you spend the appropriate time to train your end users and to iron out any of the kinks.
Thank you. Great advice to kind of close the event with. So we are out of time. I wanted to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you very much to our presenters and to our sponsor, Antenna Software. This event will be on demand within about 2 hours, and the presentations will be downloadable as well. So with that, have a great rest of the day, everyone.